But before I get started, let me just try to recap my story. In March of 2002, I went into a diabetic coma. I was diagnosed with a specific condition known as a non-contagic hyperglycemic hyperosmolar coma. Now, when I came out of the coma, the doctor said, Dwayne, we got some good news and we got some bad news. The good news is that you're alive. The bad news is we've got to remove your legs. So I don't know if anyone here has ever been in a coma, but when you come out of a coma, you don't really realize that you were in a coma. And when the doctor said remove the legs, I thought he meant, oh, move my legs to the other side of the bed. And he said, no, Dwayne, remove. And my daughter said, you mean cut off his legs? My daughter had flown in from Pittsburgh. And I said, cut off the legs? And the doctor said, yeah, and we'll save $250 if we don't like to say cut or amputate, we like to say remove. And so I'm still a little groggy, and I said, okay, $250, I'll save $250. Is that per leg, or is that for both legs? And my daughter is screaming, Dad, it doesn't matter how much it costs. You're not going to remove my father's legs. Part of the drug protocol that they put me on, because my blood glucose level had spiked at 1,337. And I didn't know what that meant, but I could tell by the look on the doctor's face that it wasn't good. So they put me on a protocol of insulin, 60 units a day, of Lantus and Humalog. They put me on Coumadin because I was struggling with deep vein thrombosis, and I had two major blood clots, so there was a possibility of a pulmonary embolism. I also had hypertriglyceridemia, which is no disrespect meant to the medical profession, but they come up with some fancy names for a lot of these diseases. Hypertriglyceridemia is basically you have too much fat in your blood. Well, I had been diagnosed with diabetes, which means you have too much glucose in your blood. So I had a combination of too much fat and too much glucose. So try to imagine taking a beverage, Kool-Aid, and you add a bunch of sugar to it. It gets very syrupy. Throw in some animal fat, stir it up. That's what my blood was like. And so they had to put me on a Coumadin to try to break down the blood clots, to try to thin out my blood. And they put me on Lipitor because my cholesterol also was off the charts. It didn't work. I was alive, but I wasn't getting any better. So they sent me home.
Did you a favor?
Yeah. They said, well, Dwayne, good luck. But luckily, my daughter had decided to take off some time from work, and she had purchased all of the blood glucose equipment and set up my lab in the house so I could begin testing my blood glucose and collecting information, because she knows I love that stuff. And the doctor said, Dwayne, you need to test your blood glucose 3 to 4 times a day. But I didn't have anything else to do. So I want everybody to know, it's not because I was that smart as an engineer. I just decided that I needed something to do because my daughter was bossing me around. And I think she enjoyed it. She was telling me what to eat, what not to eat. And I couldn't argue with her because, again, I was very fatigued. My legs hurt. I didn't have a lot of energy. I couldn't drive anywhere. And then to complicate matters, my mother came up a couple days later with my sister. So please, people, understand what's happening here. I'm a single man. I got 3 women in my house telling me what to do. So you want to talk about some stress? But again, I really had no choice. And I felt it's only going to be a couple weeks. I'll just have to deal with this. And I was a little disappointed in my mother because when she came into the house, I would have expected a hug because I almost died. But my mother walks into the house, looks at me and go, "You're fat." I said, "What?" And my sister goes, "Bro, you are fat." And I was about 80, 85 pounds heavier than I am right now, but I carried it well. You know, I felt I was a little chunky. And my daughter said, "No, Dad, you passed chunky 35 pounds ago." And the first thing my mother did, she went right to the kitchen, went to the cupboards and the refrigerator, turned to my sister and started shaking her head. "I don't know who this boy is." And that's what my mom called us when she didn't like you. She called you boy. Not son, boy. And she started taking the food out of the cupboards. My potato chips, my pretzels, my pizza pies, my ice cream, my cookies. She started packing up all my good food. And I said, "Mom," I said, what are you? Whoa, feedback. And she says, "You're taking this food back to the grocery store." And this is the way my mother operated. This is the way my father operated. You do something wrong, you're going to fix it. And so I went back to the grocery store. And again, you have to understand something. I live in a small town outside Rochester. And so everyone knows me in the grocery store. And there ain't that many black people out there. So and when they see a black person coming in with 3 carts of food to return it, you know, they're thinking, "Where did he get this food?" And so the store clerk, she recognized me. She says, "Dwayne, what's going on?" I said, "I got to return this food." She goes, "Dwayne, you love our food." I said, "I do. I love your food. And I love them little pizza pies. I love Mrs. Smith's apple pie. But I got to return this." She goes, "Why?" I said, "Well, I'm a diabetic." She goes, "So?" I said, "Okay. See the woman behind me with that mean look on her face?" And so the store clerk looks over, "Oh." And she saw the look on my mother's face and looked at me and said, "Dwayne, we'll give you a store credit." So they took back all the food because I did have the receipts. They gave me a store credit of, it was around $274.
Wow, that's a lot of junk food.
There's a lot of apple pie, a lot of pizza, a lot of pretzels, a lot of potato chips. And my mother took my little shopping cart with the credit on it and started shopping. And she picked up some Brussels sprouts, broccoli, spinach, the 3 vegetables that I hate. I said, "Mom, can you at least pick something that I like?" Boy, you messed up your life. I did not raise you this way, and obviously you need my direction. Now, and again, because people say, "Dwayne, you're a grown man." I said, "Yeah, but you don't understand. My mother," see, when I was growing up, my mother was a living legend. All the kids in the neighborhood, when my mother came running, they ran before I did. And I knew my mother was coming because you're on a ball field. If the people in the outfield start jumping over the fence, I knew that she was coming down the street. And my mother, she's only that big. But my mother could leap and rip a branch out of a tree. And you became part of that tree. So when you grow up with that type of experience, you learn you don't say no to my mother. You go along with the program. And again, I felt I only had 2 or 3 weeks of this, and she'll be going back home. But funny thing happened. Funny thing happened. I started eating them ugly Brussels sprouts. And the hospital plan that I had started